What would you do if your little girl swallowed a necklace? And that single moment uncovered the truth about the mother she lost and the father she's about to lose. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when Dr. Grace Howard stepped into her pediatric exam room, sipping lukewarm coffee from her hospital mug. After 15 years of caring for children, she could usually predict how a visit would go within seconds of meeting her patient. But the little girl who walked in that day gave her pause. 6-year-old Emily Callahan entered the room holding her father's hand, wearing a bright purple dress that fluttered with each step. It was cheerful, playful, the kind of dress a child might wear to a birthday party. But Emily's eyes told another story. They were large and hazel, focused not on Dr. Howard, not on the toys in the corner or the colorful wall art, but on the floor tracing the same square tile as if it were the most important thing in the world. She didn't look up once. "This is Emily," her father said, shifting uneasily. "She's been saying her stomach hurts. Nothing serious, I don't think, but just wanted to be sure." Dr. Howard smiled gently. "Thanks for bringing her in, Mr. Jack Callahan." She nodded. "Nice to meet you, Jack." Emily didn't say a word. Her small hands were pressed against her tummy, not in obvious pain, but in the way a child might protect a secret. Dr. Howard crouched down to her level. "Hi there, Emily. I'm Dr. Grace." "You can call me Grace if you like." The girl gave the faintest of nods. "She always this quiet?" Grace asked, keeping her tone light as she glanced over Emily's chart. Jack hesitated, adjusting his worn baseball cap. "She talks when she needs to, just shy around new people." Grace had a sixth sense, not medical, not scientific, but honed over thousands of interactions. A radar that whispered when something wasn't quite right. That radar was screaming now. "Emily," she said softly, "would it be okay if I listened to your tummy for a second?" Emily glanced quickly at her father, then nodded again, a tiny, barely there motion. Grace retrieved her stethoscope and gently pressed it to the girl's abdomen. Emily flinched just slightly. "Does that hurt?" Grace asked, careful not to alarm her. Emily shook her head. But her little hands didn't move from her belly. Jack scratched the back of his neck. "She's been like this for a few days. Maybe a week. Hard to tell sometimes. She doesn't always say when something's wrong." There was something heavy in his voice. Not guilt, not quite, but something close. Grace noted the dark circles under Jack's eyes. His clothes were clean but old. The way he looked at Emily with concern and maybe a hint of helplessness made something stir in her chest. "I'd like to do a quick scan," she said, still casual. "Just to rule anything out. Nothing invasive, I promise." "Yeah," Jack nodded. "Whatever you need." They moved to the ultrasound room. Grace kept her voice soft, narrating every step so Emily wouldn't be afraid. The girl stayed quiet, eyes fixed on the ceiling now, hands still guarding her stomach like a treasure box. Then the screen lit up, and Grace's breath caught in her throat. There, clear as day in the grayscale fuzz, was something that didn't belong. A small metallic object, jagged around the edges. Definitely not food, not natural, and not safe. She didn't let her face show it. "Mr. Callahan," she said gently, "would you mind stepping outside for just a moment?" "Nurse Thelma will stay with you. I just need to ask Emily a couple of quick questions." Jack hesitated, confused, but nodded and left. Grace waited for the door to click shut. Then she knelt beside the table, close enough to speak softly but not intrusively. "Emily, sweetheart," she said, "can you tell me what's in your tummy?" Emily's eyes welled up with tears. "Something shiny," she whispered. "Something to remember." Grace's heart skipped. "Something to remember." Emily gave a tiny nod. "It was Mommy's necklace." The part that played music. Grace felt the air shift, something in that tiny confession that broke the stillness in the room. "You swallowed it?" she asked gently. Emily nodded again, her lips trembling. "It broke. I didn't want Daddy to be sad." she sniffled, brushing her sleeve across her cheek. He gets sad about broken things. Grace swallowed the lump rising in her throat. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't mischief. This was grief, a child's grief, quiet and hidden and unspeakably heavy. I see, Grace said softly. Thank you for telling me. Outside the room, Jack paced the hallway. Nurse Thelma, a seasoned volunteer with decades of calm under pressure, kept a close but kind eye on him. Back inside, Grace moved quickly. She ordered the necessary tests. She made the surgical call. And, as protocol demanded, she alerted Child Protective Services. She hated that part. Hated that it would trigger a whole system that often meant well, but didn't always understand the nuance of a family trying its best. But there were rules, and sharp metal objects in a child's stomach demanded action. Still, she couldn't shake Emily's voice from her mind. Something shiny, something to remember. By the time she stepped into the hallway again, she had already made another decision, one that might push boundaries, maybe even raise eyebrows, but it was the right one. She wouldn't let this little girl, this father, get lost in the cracks. Not this time. Jack Callahan stood outside the exam room, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, gripping the frayed brim of his cap. He had always hated hospitals, too many fluorescent lights, too much quiet that didn't feel peaceful. But today, the silence felt different. It felt like judgment was coming. Nurse Thelma, with her calm presence and soft voice, tried to reassure him, but Jack knew something wasn't right. Emily had been acting off for a week, maybe longer. He'd chalked it up to a stomach bug or growing pains, not this. Not whatever this was. Back inside, Dr. Grace Howard was piecing together a story more complex than any scan could reveal. Emily's confession sat heavy in her mind. It was Mommy's necklace, the part that played music. And then that whisper that had stopped Grace cold. I didn't want Daddy to be sad. He gets sad about broken things. Grace knew she had to proceed carefully. Medical protocol required her to document every detail, especially when foreign objects were involved. But this wasn't just a medical case. It was a child carrying grief far beyond her years. Grace crouched beside the exam table again, careful to maintain eye contact at the child's level. Emily, she said gently, can you tell me when you swallowed the necklace piece? The little girl's fingers twisted the edge of her purple dress. After it broke, she whispered. It used to play music. Mommy gave it to me before she left. Grace kept her voice calm. Do you remember where you found it? In Daddy's drawer. He put it away after it stopped working. Emily's lower lip quivered. I just wanted to keep it safe. Inside me. So it wouldn't get lost again. Grace's throat tightened. Outside in the hallway, Jack stopped pacing when Nurse Thelma asked carefully, Has Emily ever mentioned swallowing anything? A toy, maybe? Or something small? Jack frowned, confused. No, nothing like that. But then he stopped. His brow furrowed. Wait, her mom's old locket, the musical one. It disappeared a while back. I thought we lost it during the move. Grace opened the door just then, her expression composed, but her eyes carried concern. Mr. Callahan, she said, motioning him a few steps away. We found a small metal object in Emily's stomach. It appears to be part of a musical locket. Jack's face went pale. The locket. I thought it was gone. He closed his eyes for a moment. After Sarah left, after she walked out on us, I packed away everything that reminded Emily of her. I didn't want to keep reopening old wounds. That necklace was broken, so I put it in the back of a drawer. His voice cracked. I didn't know Emily had found it. Grace nodded. She said she swallowed it so you wouldn't be sad that it was broken. Jack's hands covered his face. God, I didn't think. It's okay, Grace said softly, though she knew what came next wasn't. The object has sharp edges. It needs to be removed surgically. The procedure is fairly routine, but... Jack's voice was thin. I've had to notify Child Protective Services. It's standard protocol when a child ingests something dangerous. Jack's heart dropped into his stomach. You think I hurt her? I don't, Grace said firmly. But the system doesn't rely on instinct. It relies on facts. Someone will come speak with you. Her safety has to be documented, evaluated. Jack's voice rose, panicked. They can't take her. She's all I've got. This isn't about taking her, Grace replied, placing a hand gently on his arm. It's about making sure she's safe, and you're part of that. As if summoned, Sharon Blake, a child services agent, arrived at the nurse's station. She looked every bit the official clipboard in hand, posture upright, eyes watchful. This is standard, Grace whispered to Jack, but I know it doesn't feel that way. Through the small window on the door, Jack saw Emily still sitting on the exam table, her arms wrapped around her belly, not from pain, but from protection. He understood now. She wasn't guarding herself from discomfort. She was guarding what she thought was a treasure, a broken piece of her mother, hidden inside her so it wouldn't get lost again. Sharon Blake introduced herself with professional courtesy but little warmth. I'll need to ask Emily a few questions alone, she said, already stepping toward the door. Wait, Jack said, his voice cracking. Can I stay? Just for a bit? Grace looked at Sharon, who gave a small nod. 5 minutes. Jack walked into the room and sat beside Emily, who finally looked up at him with tearful eyes. I'm sorry, Daddy, she whispered. I didn't mean to make things worse. Jack gathered her into his arms, careful of her belly. Oh, Peanut. You didn't do anything wrong. I should have been paying more attention. They sat like that until Sharon entered, clipboard at the ready. I'll just be right outside, sweetheart, Jack promised, standing slowly. Emily watched him go, her little hands reaching for the journal Miss Thelma had left earlier. She clutched it like a shield. Sharon's questions were gentle but clear. Do you feel safe at home, Emily? A nod. Do you have your own room? Another nod. Can you tell me why you swallowed the shiny part of the necklace? Emily's voice was barely a whisper. It was the last thing Mommy gave me. Daddy gets sad when he sees it, so I wanted to keep it safe where no one could take it away. Sharon's pen stilled. The emotion behind the child's decision was undeniable. This wasn't carelessness. This was love misdirected, maybe, but pure. Back in the hallway, Jack stared at a family photo on his phone, a Christmas shot from the year before Sarah left. They were all smiling. Emily had both arms around her parents, proud of her purple pajamas. That was the last time we were all together, Jack murmured, as Grace joined him. She just left, he continued. No warning. Just a note. Said she needed to find herself. A month later, the factory laid off half the crew. I lost my job, lost our home. We've been in that trailer park ever since. Grace looked at him, really looked at the man behind the exhaustion and worry. His hands were rough, his shirt clean but faded. A handmade bracelet from Emily was tied around his wrist. He hadn't given up. He was doing everything he could with what little he had. She'll be okay, Grace said gently. The surgery is scheduled for later this morning. And after that? Jack asked, voice low. Grace hesitated. That's up to the system, she said. But I promise you I'll do everything I can to help them see what I see. Jack nodded slowly. A man preparing for a fight he didn't know how to win, only that he had to. For her. By 10:20 a.m., 6-year-old Emily Callahan was prepped for surgery. She lay on a pediatric surgical bed in a pale blue gown 2 sizes too big, clutching her purple journal like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Beside her, Dr. Grace Howard spoke in a soft, steady tone as a nurse applied the anesthesia. Jack stood at the edge of the room, helpless. His little girl looked so small, so breakable. And yet she was the strongest person he knew. I'll be right here when you wake up, Peanut, he whispered. Emily blinked slowly, already slipping under. Don't let them take you away. The words hit Jack like a punch to the chest. They won't, he said, trying to believe it. But even as the surgical team moved with calm precision, another machine, colder, more bureaucratic, had already started grinding into motion. Out in the hospital hallway, Sharon Blake, the CPS agent, met with Grace and the hospital social worker. We've filed the initial report, Sharon said, flipping through her clipboard. Now we need to determine temporary placement while the home evaluation is pending. Grace frowned. Temporary placement? It's protocol, Sharon replied. Mr. Callahan's housing situation is under review. The child will need somewhere safe to stay until we can verify conditions. She's not in danger, Grace said, firmer than before. He's a struggling single father, not a threat. Sharon didn't flinch. I'm not saying he is, but a 6-year-old swallowed a sharp metal object under his care. That alone triggers procedure. Grace crossed her arms. What about the community care initiative? Sharon raised an eyebrow. That's still a pilot program, but it's active. And I know someone perfect, Miss Thelma Ellison. Retired teacher, hospital volunteer, fully certified for CCI placement. She's built for this. There was a pause. Sharon considered it. If she agrees to take the child and Mr. Callahan complies with all conditions, I'll submit the request. Grace nodded, already pulling out her phone. In the recovery room an hour later, Emily was waking up. Miss Thelma sat by her bedside, reading aloud from a children's book about a brave bunny with a broken paw. The words were calm, rhythmic, comforting, the kind of comfort that didn't ask for anything in return. Emily's eyelids fluttered. "Where's my daddy?" she murmured. "He'll be here soon, sweetheart," Thelma said, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "You promise?" "I promise." When Grace returned, she held up a small plastic container with a sealed lid. Inside, a jagged metallic curve sat on a cushion of gauze, the broken music piece from the locket. Emily blinked at it. "That's Mommy's music." "It doesn't play anymore," Grace said gently. "But it's safe now, just like you." Emily nodded, then whispered, "Can Daddy keep it?" "Only if you want him to." "I do." Meanwhile, Jack sat in a consultation room across the hospital, facing Sharon Blake. The sterile walls felt more like a courtroom than a meeting space. "I need you to understand," Sharon said, her voice professional but not unkind. "This is not about punishment, it's about protection." Jack nodded once, but his jaw tightened. "Emily will be placed temporarily with a registered caregiver, someone from the Community Care Initiative. Her name is Thelma Ellison. She volunteers here at the hospital." "She's kind, stable, and trusted." Jack looked down at his hands, the calloused fingers that had built furniture, fixed broken appliances, and once held his baby girl on the night she was born. Those same hands now felt powerless. "How long?" he asked. "That depends. A few weeks, maybe a month. You'll need to attend parenting support classes, submit to a home evaluation, and meet with me weekly." Jack let out a shaky breath. "I'll do whatever it takes." Sharon studied him for a long moment. "Good, because Emily deserves that." Later that evening, after all the paperwork had been signed and Emily was officially discharged, Jack stood outside Thelma's yellow Victorian home, a small suitcase in hand. Emily held his fingers tightly as they walked up the stone path. "You said I'm not in trouble," she said quietly. "You're not, Peanut." "But am I being taken away?" Jack knelt beside her. "Not taken, just staying somewhere safe while I get things ready at home. It's like a sleepover with a really nice grandma." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Jack nodded. "Every single day. You'll be so sick of me." A tiny smile broke through. "Never." Inside, Thelma showed Emily to her new room's soft lavender curtains, a bed with a patchwork quilt, and a nightlight shaped like a star. On the bedside table sat her journal and the plastic container with the broken music piece. Emily ran her fingers over the lid. "It's still important, even if it's broken." "Yes, it is," Thelma said softly. Sometimes broken things matter the most. Back at the trailer, Jack sat alone in the dark, holding Emily's drawing, a stick figure family with 3 people holding hands under a bright sun. Him, Emily, and now Thelma, not a replacement, but a bridge. And Jack realized something as he stared at the drawing. This wasn't just about passing an evaluation or following protocols. This was about building a life that didn't depend on everything being perfect, only that it be filled with love. He reached into his drawer and pulled out a dusty old music box he'd bought at a thrift store years ago. It didn't play the same tune, but it had space for something new. He took out the broken locket piece and set it next to the music box. "I'm going to fix this," he whispered. "Maybe not the way it was, but something better." The first morning Emily Callahan woke up in Miss Thelma's house. She didn't cry. That alone was a miracle. The lavender curtains swayed in the breeze from an open window. Sunlight filtered through in soft strips, dancing on the wooden floor. At the bedside table, her purple journal sat neatly beside the small plastic container holding the broken piece of her mother's locket. Emily's fingers reached for it immediately. Still here, still hers. She pressed the box to her chest and lay still, listening to the quiet hum of the house. Somewhere downstairs, she heard the creak of the porch swing and the distant sound of a kettle beginning to boil. And for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel afraid. Down in the kitchen, Miss Thelma moved with slow, practiced ease. She wasn't in a rush. She never was. The cinnamon rolls were already rising on the counter, and 2 mugs waited on the table, one with cocoa for Emily, one with chamomile tea for herself. When Emily tiptoed in, still in her pajamas, Thelma greeted her like she'd been waiting all morning. "Well, there's my sunshine," she said warmly. "Did those stars on your ceiling keep the nightmares away?" Emily gave a small nod. "I thought they might," Thelma said, pulling out a chair. "Come sit. I made something special." The cocoa was warm, with a single marshmallow floating in the middle, like a soft little boat. "Do you like to draw?" Thelma asked, setting down a small box of colored pencils. Emily hesitated, then opened her journal to a fresh page. "I draw people I miss," she whispered. Thelma's heart gave a small tug. "That's a beautiful way to keep them close." Emily looked up. "Do you miss anybody?" "Yes," Thelma said, stirring her tea. "I had a daughter once. Her name was Lillian. She passed away a long time ago." Emily was quiet. "Was she little like me?" "No, sweetheart," Thelma smiled softly. "She was all grown up, but she used to draw too. She'd make the most beautiful pictures of birds and flowers and clouds." Emily thought for a moment. "I can draw you a flower if you want." Thelma reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I'd like that very much." Meanwhile, across town, Jack Callahan stood at the door of the Community Family Resource Center, gripping the strap of his backpack like it was the last solid thing in his life. Inside was his first parenting support class. He hadn't slept much the night before, not because Emily wasn't home, though that weighed heavy, but because he couldn't stop replaying every mistake he'd ever made as a father. What if the system was right? What if he wasn't enough? "First time?" a tired but kind voice asked beside him. A woman in her 40s, with deep lines of weariness etched around her eyes, offered him a small smile. "I'm Maggie. Second round for me," Jack nodded. "Jack." "First, hopefully only." "Everyone hopes that," Maggie said. "Program's not bad, though. And Mr. Pierce, the guy who runs it, he's actually decent." The door opened and Logan Pierce, a man in his early 50s with salt and pepper hair and the presence of someone who'd seen the worst but still believed in the best, stepped in. "Good morning, everyone," he said, voice steady. "Let's skip the lectures today and start with one question. Not, what's wrong with you, but what happened to you?" Jack blinked. No one had asked him that before. Back at Thelma's house, Emily was outside helping plant forget-me-nots in a window box just below her bedroom. "They're called that because they help people remember," Thelma explained, her hands gently scooping soil around the roots. Emily pressed one flower into place. My mommy gave me something to remember her. The locket piece, Thelma said softly. It's very special. Emily nodded, even though it's broken. Thelma looked at the little girl beside her, hands covered in dirt, face serious beyond her years, and thought of how much heart children carry in their tiny bodies. Sweetheart, she said gently, sometimes broken things carry more love than perfect ones. Emily looked up. You believe that? I do, Thelma said. I see proof of it every day. At the parenting class, Jack listened as others shared stories of layoffs, divorce, addiction, and survival. When it was his turn, he cleared his throat. My name's Jack, he said. My daughter swallowed something she shouldn't have. It was part of a locket her mom gave her before she left us. I didn't know she'd found it. I didn't know she'd kept it. He paused. I guess I didn't know a lot. No one judged him. That was the surprising part. Instead, Logan asked, And what do you want for her now? Jack looked down at his hands. A home that doesn't feel temporary. A life where she knows she's safe, and a father who doesn't miss the signs anymore. Logan gave a small nod. Then that's where we begin. That evening, as Thelma tucked Emily into bed, she noticed the child clutching the plastic container again. You know, she said, you can keep that on your windowsill now. It's not going anywhere. I know, Emily said, but it still feels like a piece of mommy. I want it close. Thelma smiled. Then close it stays. Before turning off the light, she paused. Emily, would it be okay if I told your daddy how brave you've been? I know he'd be proud. Emily hesitated, then whispered, Will he think I was bad for swallowing it? No, sweetheart, Thelma said gently. He'll know you were holding on, and he'll love you even more for it. Emily's eyes closed slowly, comforted not just by the words, but by the belief behind them. Across town, Jack sat at his tiny kitchen table with a broken music box, a screwdriver, and a flashlight. His fingers weren't skilled in delicate things. He worked better with wrenches and rusted engines. But this wasn't about being perfect. This was about trying. Piece by piece, he fitted the broken locket's gear into the old box. The music didn't play exactly right. It skipped, wobbled, but it was music nonetheless, and it was for her. The first time Jack Callahan saw Emily again after the surgery, he arrived 15 minutes early. He sat in the small visitor room at the Community Family Resource Center, clutching a paper bag in his hands inside, a surprise he hoped would make her smile. His shirt was clean, freshly ironed. His hair was combed back the way his daughter used to do for him before school. It had only been 3 days, but it felt like a lifetime. When the door opened and Miss Thelma walked in with Emily, the world tilted back into focus. Daddy! Emily squealed, rushing into his arms. Jack knelt, catching her carefully, mindful of her healing incision, but she clung to him like nothing else in the world mattered, and in that moment, nothing did. I missed you so much, he murmured, holding her tightly. I missed you too, she whispered into his shoulder. They settled onto the couch, supervised by Sharon Blake, who watched discreetly from the corner, clipboard in hand. I brought you something, Jack said, handing her the paper bag. Emily opened it with both hands, her eyes lighting up as she pulled out a small, hand-carved wooden music box, painted with little purple flowers. She gasped when she lifted the lid. A soft lullaby played, uneven but sweet. Inside, on a bed of velvet, lay the broken locket piece, now polished and strung on a simple chain. It doesn't play the same music, Jack said, but I found this at the thrift store. I put the old piece inside so you can still keep it close. Emily stared at the box in awe. You fixed it? Jack smiled. Not fixed, but changed, made into something new. Like me? She asked quietly. After the hospital, Jack nodded. Exactly like you. Sharon glanced up from her clipboard. Her expression softened. She made a quiet note. Strong parent-child bond. Emotional connection intact. She watched as Emily nestled into Jack's side, clutching the music box like a treasure. The visits became a rhythm each afternoon, a thread weaving father and daughter back together. They read from Emily's journal, laughed over drawings, and talked about big feelings, as Miss Thelma had taught her to say. Jack told her about the parenting classes. "They're actually kind of helpful," he admitted one day. "We talk about how parents need support too, and how it's okay to ask for help. Is that why I'm staying with Mrs. Thelma?" Emily asked, her voice gentle. Jack looked into her wide hazel eyes and nodded. "Yes. Because I needed help being the best daddy I could be," she smiled. "Mrs. Thelma says even squirrels help each other find food for winter." Jack chuckled. "Well, squirrels are smarter than I thought." At the end of each visit, Sharon walked Emily back to Thelma's house while Jack lingered a moment longer in the empty room. Sometimes he cried, quietly, gratefully. These weren't just supervised meetings, they were repairs. One hug, one story, one swing on the playground at a time. One afternoon, during a walk at the park, Emily paused at the playground entrance. "Can I swing?" she asked, almost like she was waiting for permission she thought might not come. "Of course," Jack said, lifting her gently into the seat. As he pushed her back and forth, her giggles echoed through the trees, like music more perfect than any box could ever play. "I want to touch the clouds!" she shouted, legs kicking the air. "You already are," Jack whispered. That evening, after Emily had gone home with Miss Thelma, Sharon walked up beside Jack as he stood by his truck. "She's blossoming," she said simply. "You both are." Jack gave a small nod, emotion caught in his throat. "I'm doing everything I can." "I see that," Sharon replied, "and keep it up. You're not far now." He watched her walk away, the sun setting behind her golden and quiet. For the first time in a long time, Jack Callahan let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, home wasn't a place. It was this. A hand held tight, a promise kept, and a daughter's smile lighting the way forward. Jack Callahan didn't remember the last time his hands had smelled like oil and soap in the same day. That Tuesday afternoon, as he finished his shift at Whitmore Auto, he wiped the grease from his knuckles, changed into a clean shirt in the employee restroom, and combed his hair in the cracked mirror. He had somewhere important to be. Across town, his daughter Emily waited for their afternoon visit, the highlight of both their days. And this time, he wasn't arriving from a second job or running on fumes. This time he came with news. As soon as Jack stepped through the door of the Community Resource Center, Emily ran to him with that now familiar sparkle in her hazel eyes. "Daddy," she shouted, launching into his arms. He caught her with practiced ease, holding her tightly. "Hey, Peanut." She leaned back, eyes wide. "Guess what?" Jack grinned. "You go first." "I helped Miss Thelma bake bread this morning." "I kneaded the dough all by myself." Jack laughed. "Sounds like you're going to be a better cook than me real soon." "I already am," she said proudly. He winked. "Fair enough. Now, guess what?" Emily's eyes widened. "What?" "I got the job," she gasped. "The one with the car place?" He nodded. "Mr. Whitmore hired me full-time." "One job, steady hours, better pay, which means I can be home when you get out of school." Her face lit up. "Every day?" "That's the plan." Emily flung her arms around his neck again. And just like that, a heavy weight Jack had been carrying quietly for weeks began to lift. Later, while they sat at the park bench near the playground, Emily pulled out her journal. "I drew something for you," she said, flipping to a new page. Jack took the book and smiled. 3 stick figures, one tall with brown hair, one small in a purple dress, and one with silver hair and glasses, all holding hands beneath a bright sun. "That's me, you, and Miss Thelma," Emily explained. Jack's voice caught in his throat. "This is beautiful." "Can we put it on the fridge when I come home?" she asked shyly. He looked at her, unsure what to say. Before he could answer, she added softly, "You said you're fixing the trailer." "I am," he said. "I painted your room lavender." "Got new curtains and glow-in-the-dark stars for the ceiling." Her face brightened. "Like the ones at Miss Thelma's?" "Exactly like those." She looked down at her lap. "Then, when can I come home?" Jack reached out and took her hand. "The home visit is this Friday," he said. "Miss Sharon and another lady will come see how we're doing. If it goes well, it won't be long now." Emily gave a small, hopeful smile. "I miss our tiny couch." He laughed. "I don't. That thing's terrible to sleep on. But it smells like you." That stopped him. For all the big things he'd been working toward, jobs, classes, evaluations, this was the one that mattered most. She missed the way her world felt when he was in it. That night, back at Thelma's house, Emily asked to hang her journal drawing on the wall next to her bed. Thelma helped her tape it up, then kissed her forehead. "Sleep well, sweetheart." "Miss Thelma?" Emily asked before the light turned off.
"Yes, dear. If I go back to Daddy's house, will I still see you?" Thelma smiled gently. "You'll always have a place here, and we'll have Sunday dinners."
"That's a promise." Emily curled beneath her quilt, the locket piece still resting on the nightstand, safe and close. "Okay," she whispered. "Then I'm not scared." Across town, Jack stood in Emily's freshly painted room. The lavender walls glowed softly in the light from a single lamp. On the bed, he placed a new purple comforter, her favorite color. He took the family drawing she'd given him and taped it to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a smiling sun. It wasn't a perfect home, but it was theirs, and it was ready. Friday arrived like a drumbeat in Jack Callahan's chest. He'd been preparing for this day since the moment he kissed Emily goodbye in that hospital recovery room, the day the system took her into temporary care. Now, after parenting classes, daily visits, a new job, and a freshly cleaned trailer, it all came down to one visit, one knock, one judgment. At 1:55 p.m., Jack paced his living room for the third time. The couch, his bed, these past few months had been made neatly with a throw pillow and folded blanket. Emily's bedroom down the hall glowed with lavender walls, new bedding, and glow-in-the-dark stars he'd stuck one by one to the ceiling the night before. At 2:00 p.m., sharp, the knock came. He opened the door to Sharon Blake, clipboard in hand, and Margaret Green, a quiet, meticulous woman from the Housing Review Board. Her expression gave nothing away. "Afternoon, Mr. Callahan," Sharon greeted. "May we come in?" "Of course," Jack said, stepping aside. They walked in with quiet purpose. Sharon's eyes scanned the space with practiced care. Margaret took notes almost immediately. Kitchen, fire extinguisher, smoke detector, secure cabinets, running water. "This is where you sleep?" Margaret asked, eyeing the pull-out couch. "Yes, ma'am," Jack said. "I wanted Emily to have the bedroom." She nodded, then made another note. When they stepped into the small lavender room, both women paused. The bed was neatly made. A stuffed bear rested on the pillow. A small bookshelf stood against the wall, 3 well-worn fairy tale books, a journal, a plastic container with the locket piece carefully displayed, and 1 framed crayon drawing. 3 stick figures under a bright sun. Sharon smiled faintly. "She drew that for you?" "Yes," Jack said quietly. "It's our family." Margaret tilted her head. "Who's the third person?" "That's Miss Thelma. Emily wanted to include her. She's the one who's been caring for her while I got it together." There was a moment of silence. Then Sharon turned to Jack. "We've reviewed your parenting program report," she said. "Logan Pierce gave you high marks, said you've not only met the requirements, you stayed late to help others." Jack nodded, unsure what to say. "We've also confirmed your employment," she continued. "Your supervisor spoke well of your reliability." Margaret closed her folder. "From a housing standpoint, the trailer is small but clean and safe. You've made clear efforts to prioritize your daughter's needs." Jack exhaled slowly. "So, What happens now? He asked. Sharon didn't smile, but her tone softened. We're recommending the next phase. Unsupervised weekend stays beginning tomorrow. Jack blinked. She can sleep here? Saturday through Sunday evening, Sharon confirmed. If those go well, we'll transition to full reunification. The air left Jack's lungs. He sat on the edge of the couch, overcome. Thank you, I mean it, thank you. Margaret gave a polite nod. We'll follow up in 1 week. As they left, Sharon turned at the door. One more thing, we strongly encourage maintaining a connection with Miss Thelma. That support has clearly mattered. Jack looked toward Emily's room, then back at her. She's part of our family now. That evening, Jack arrived at Thelma's front porch just after dinner. Emily was waiting with her small backpack, bouncing on her toes. Is it today? She asked before he could speak. Can I come? Jack crouched down and held her hands. Not just visit. You're sleeping over. Her eyes widened. Really? He nodded. You'll be in your own bed, the one with the purple comforter. And I put your drawing on the fridge just like you asked. She squealed, grabbing her bag and hugging Thelma tightly. I'll be back tomorrow, okay? Thelma kissed the top of her head. I'll see you Sunday night, sugar. You go make memories. As Jack helped Emily into the truck, Thelma passed him a small covered dish. Lasagna, she said, so you don't forget dinner in all the excitement. Jack's voice caught. You've done more for us than I can say. Thelma smiled, eyes misty. You're doing the rest just fine. Back at the trailer, Emily ran straight to her room and flopped onto her bed, eyes wide with wonder. It's even better than I remembered. Jack stood in the doorway, watching her trace stars on the ceiling. She looked back. You kept the music box too? I wouldn't dare move it, he said. It belongs right there. After dinner, they curled up on the couch, her head on his chest, his hand resting over hers as the credits of a cartoon rolled. Daddy, she whispered, are we almost home for good? Jack kissed her hair. We're almost there, Peanut, and we're doing it together. Emily Callahan lay in her lavender room, staring up at the ceiling where the glow-in-the-dark stars shimmered gently. Everything looked just like she remembered, and yet it didn't feel exactly the same. Her purple comforter smelled like fresh laundry. Her music box sat on the dresser playing a soft lullaby, and her drawing hung proudly on the fridge. But when the lights went out, the silence came with questions. Would her dad wake up if she called for him? What if she had a bad dream? What if she cried? Would that make her seem not ready? She clutched her locket tighter beneath the blanket. Jack was in the kitchen rinsing dishes when he heard a soft sniffle. He dried his hands and crept quietly down the hall. Emily's door was slightly ajar. She was sitting upright in bed, her small back hunched forward, shoulders trembling. He didn't ask anything. He just walked in, sat on the edge of the bed, and gently wrapped his arms around her. I'm sorry, she whispered, face buried in his shirt. I don't know why I feel scared. I was excited, but now I miss Miss Thelma. And the stars look different, and I think my stomach's nervous. Jack smiled softly. Your stomach's just saying, this is new. New things can feel scary, even when they're good. Emily looked up. Does it mean I'm not ready? He shook his head. It means you're human. And brave. And it means you care about Miss Thelma and this place, and about doing it right. He tucked her hair behind her ear. You know what I still get nervous about? She blinked. What? Being your dad? Emily giggled a little. But you already are. Exactly, he said, and I still mess up sometimes. But we figure it out together. She leaned into his side. Can you stay until I fall asleep? Jack didn't move. I'll stay all night if you want. The next morning, Emily woke to the smell of pancakes. She followed the scent to the kitchen, where Jack stood flipping a not-quite-perfect stack, a bit of batter on his shirt. Morning, sleepyhead, he grinned. I didn't burn 'em this time. Emily climbed onto the stool at the counter. "Only a little," she teased. They ate together, laughing when syrup dripped off the plate, then brushed teeth side by side in the tiny bathroom mirror, Emily standing on a stool, Jack ducking a bit to fit. It was chaotic. A little loud, imperfect, and absolutely perfect. That afternoon, they walked to the local playground. Emily brought her journal, and Jack packed a small lunch in a paper bag. They sat on the same bench they'd visited during supervised visits. Only this time, no clipboard, no silent watcher, just them. "Can I tell you something?" Emily asked, her feet swinging. "Always." "I used to think I had to choose between you and Miss Thelma," she said. "But now I think maybe love doesn't have to split." Jack nodded slowly. "No, it doesn't. It can stretch like a big blanket big enough to keep everybody warm." Emily smiled. "I like that. A love blanket." They laughed together, and then she leaned her head on his shoulder. That night, Emily asked if they could leave the door open a crack. "Just for tonight," she said. Jack agreed, and when she fell asleep, he watched her for a long moment, the rise and fall of her chest, the music box still humming quietly. Then he walked back to the kitchen and picked up his phone. He texted Miss Thelma. "First night went well. We had a few tears, but lots of pancakes. Thank you for helping her feel safe enough to come back." Her reply came quickly. "She came back because she never stopped believing in you. I just helped hold the light until you found your way again." Jack sat at the table, overwhelmed by the truth in those words. That Sunday night, when Emily returned to Thelma's house just for the evening, she ran to her arms, excited and glowing. "We made pancakes and I got syrup everywhere, and Daddy didn't even mind." Thelma laughed, holding her tightly. "I bet it was delicious." Emily looked up. "I still want to come see you every week, okay?" Thelma smiled, her eyes full. "I was counting on it." Back at home, Jack picked up Emily's purple backpack from the truck seat. He noticed something sticking out of the front pocket, her journal, open to a new page. It was a drawing. A house. 2 figures in the doorway, one tall, one small, and hearts drawn all around. Across the top, in crayon, she'd written, "Home is where you sleep the best." Jack pressed the paper to his chest, then carefully set it on the fridge beside the first drawing. She was finding her way back, and so was he. The courtroom smelled like paper and polished wood, overhead lights too bright, and a quiet that pressed against Jack Callahan's ribs like a weight. He sat at the front with his hands folded tightly in his lap, wearing his best shirt and freshly shined boots. His heart thudded in his chest like a bass drum. Across the aisle sat Sharon Blake, clipboard in hand, flanked by Margaret Green and a local representative from Child Services. And just behind him sat Emily. Her hair was braided neatly, her favorite purple headband in place. She sat beside Miss Thelma, swinging her feet, her hands folded in her lap, just like his. She looked so small in that big wooden bench, but Jack knew better. There was nothing small about her heart. The judge entered, Judge Helen Blake, silver-haired, glasses low on her nose, reputation for being fair but firm. She looked over the files stacked before her, then at Jack. "Mr. Callahan," she began, "we are here to determine whether full custody of your daughter, Emily, shall be returned to you without restrictions." Jack stood. "Yes, Your Honor." Sharon rose next. "We've monitored Mr. Callahan over the past 8 weeks. He has maintained steady employment, completed all parenting classes, secured stable housing, and provided a safe, nurturing environment during all unsupervised visits. Our team recommends reunification." Jack didn't breathe. Margaret added, "We also conducted 2 additional home checks, both passed. The child is clearly bonded with her father." Judge Blake nodded. "Is the child present today?" "She is, Your Honor," Sharon said. And she asked if she could say something. There was a hush. The judge looked over her glasses. "Does she understand the setting?" Miss Thelma stood, gently encouraging Emily to rise. She understands what this means, and I think you'll want to hear it. Emily stepped forward slowly. Her shoes clicked softly on the tile floor as she approached the bench. She looked up at the judge with a quiet bravery that caught everyone off guard. "Hi," she said, voice steady but small. "Hello, Emily," Judge Blake said gently. "You can speak freely here. What would you like to say?" Emily looked back at her dad, then at Thelma, then forward. "I was scared when I had to leave my daddy," she began. "But Miss Thelma kept me safe. She helped me when my tummy hurt and read me stories at night. I love her very much." The judge smiled. "That's very kind of you to say." Emily took a breath. "But my daddy, he never stopped coming. Even when I was mad or scared or tired. He brought me pancakes and stars from my ceiling. He talks to me about feelings. He listens. He always comes back." She looked straight into the judge's eyes. "I want to live with him. He makes me feel like home." The room was silent. Even Sharon, usually composed, dabbed at her eye. Jack blinked rapidly, clutching the edge of the table. Judge Blake looked at Emily for a long moment. "Thank you, young lady. That was very brave." Emily walked back to her seat. Thelma wrapped an arm around her shoulders. After a few quiet minutes of deliberation and whispered confirmation between the judge and the clerk, Judge Blake returned her gaze to Jack. "Mr. Callahan," she said, "this court finds that you have met every standard and expectation for safe and stable reunification. Full legal custody of Emily Callahan is hereby restored to you." Jack felt the words before he heard them. He closed his eyes. His hands trembled. Then Emily shot from her seat and threw herself into his arms. They cried together, clinging to each other not as broken pieces, but as something whole, healed, and still healing. Behind them, Thelma stood with tears in her eyes. Sharon smiled softly. Even Margaret nodded. Jack looked up and mouthed a silent thank you to the judge. Judge Blake simply gave a rare, kind smile. "No further judgment needed," she said. Outside the courthouse, Jack lifted Emily onto his shoulders. "Now what?" she laughed. "We go home," he said. "And then?" He thought for a second. "Then we start living like we've already made it." She reached down, her little fingers brushing through his hair. "I think we already have." That evening, back at their trailer, Jack placed the court papers in a plastic folder. He tucked them in the drawer beside Emily's birth certificate, a drawing of their family, and the old music box. He sat back and looked around the room. The fridge hummed quietly. Emily was brushing her teeth, humming the lullaby to herself. The stars glowed faintly in her room. There was no fanfare, no fireworks. Just peace. And that was more than enough. It had been 3 weeks since the court ruling, and life inside the little trailer on Sycamore Lane had found its rhythm. The stars still glowed on Emily's ceiling. The pancakes still got burned every third Saturday. And Jack Callahan still paused, sometimes mid-dish, mid-laundry, mid-laughter, just to make sure this wasn't all some dream he'd wake from. It wasn't perfect, but it was whole. One quiet Sunday, as the late afternoon sun poured through the kitchen window, Emily sat at the small table with her crayons spread out in a circle like petals. She was working on something important. Jack was nearby, fixing the screen door with a screwdriver and humming to himself. "Daddy?" she said. "Yeah, Peanut?" She held up her latest drawing, a house with flowers in the yard, a cat in the window, and 3 smiling stick figures. One tall, one small, one older, with glasses and a grey bun. Underneath it, in big crayon letters, she'd written, "My family." Jack blinked. "Miss Thelma's in it," she added proudly. "Because families can be made out of love, not just rules, right?" Jack nodded slowly. "That's right. Can we go see her?" "Already planned," he grinned. "We're bringing dessert." At Thelma's house, the smell of cinnamon apple cobbler met them at the door. "Look at you two," she said, wiping her hands on her apron as Emily ran into her arms. "You smell like a bakery," Emily said. "That's how you know it's Sunday," Thelma winked. They ate at the kitchen table, Jack, Emily and Thelma, with laughter, seconds and stories between bites. Emily talked about her school project. Thelma shared updates on her garden. And Jack, he just watched his daughter beam. Watched this gentle woman who had stepped in without obligation treat his child like her own. Watched what love looked like when it stayed. After dinner, Thelma handed Emily a small wrapped box. "It's not new," she said softly, "but it belonged to someone who would have loved you very much." Inside was a tiny silver locket, aged but polished with the initials AC carved on the back. "This was mine," Thelma explained. "Given to me by my mama, I thought, maybe it's time for it to hold a new story." Emily's eyes filled. Jack swallowed hard. Emily reached into her pocket and pulled out the broken half of her mother's locket, the one they had found during her hospital visit, still scratched but intact. "Can I put them together?" she asked. Thelma nodded. "Of course, baby." Emily opened both. One held her mother's photo, the other empty. Jack leaned over. "Let's take a picture of the three of us next Sunday." "We'll put it in here." Emily nodded, smiling through her tears. And just like that, two pasts met one present and created something brand new. Later that night, back at the trailer, Emily placed both lockets in a small wooden box beside her bed. She turned to Jack. "You know what I like best about our home now?" "What's that?" "It's not quiet the same way it used to be. It's not lonely quiet." Jack sat beside her. "No, sweetheart, it's full quiet. The good kind." She snuggled under her covers. "Do you think Mommy would like it here?" Jack looked around. The lavender walls, the glow-in-the-dark stars, the fridge covered in crayon art and grocery lists. "I think she'd say you're doing amazing," he whispered. "Both of us." That night, as Jack stood at the kitchen sink finishing dishes, he looked out the window and saw a small white moth tapping softly at the screen. He smiled. Then he turned out the light, stepped quietly into his daughter's room, and kissed her forehead. "Good night, Emily." "Night, Daddy." She was safe. She was home. And so was he. Life lesson. Love doesn't have to be perfect, just present. This story reminds us that love, especially within a family, isn't about perfection. It's about showing up even when you're scared, even when you've failed. Jack didn't have all the answers. He made mistakes. But he never stopped trying. That steady presence, day after day, is what ultimately healed his relationship with his daughter. For many older adults who have lived through loss, regret, or distance from loved ones, this story offers hope. It tells us that healing is still possible, that even broken things can be rebuilt with kindness, humility, and time. And perhaps most beautifully, it shows that family isn't always defined by blood. Miss Thelma, a woman with no obligation, became a pillar of love and security for a hurting child. Sometimes, the people who stay, who listen, who care quietly, become the most important chapters in our story. No matter your age or past, it's never too late to be someone's safe place. And it's never too late to come home, not to a house, but to love that never gave up on you.